Hello, I'm Jesse Weiler here for the Institute on Religious Life. I'm here with Sister Andrea Kantner, so I want to make sure I get that right. She is a sister of St. Francis of the Holy Eucharist and founder of Franciscan Mission Warehouse in Independence, Missouri. Sister, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very fine.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Would you mind, before we get into our conversation, leading us in prayer?
Yes, I would. And I would like to do it with a blessing that I pray every morning for all those who've been involved in my mission, my ministries in the past, the present, and the future. And it's my way of showing gratitude for all the graces I've received through others. And so this is the blessing. May the reign of Jesus Christ, King of all nations, be recognized in your heart. May the reign of Jesus, King of all nations, be lived in your heart. May the reign of Jesus, King of all nations, be given through your heart to other hearts, so that the reign of Jesus, King of all nations, may be lived in every heart all over the world. And I ask a special blessing through Our Lady, Mediatrix of Grace, who as Queen and Mother of all nations has obtained it for you as a tremendous grace from the Sacred Heart of her divine Son. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. What a beautiful prayer. And I'm very excited about our conversation today and some of the mission work that you've been doing. But before we get to that, would you mind telling me a little bit about how you discovered your vocation and how you heard the call? And tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. I grew up in a family that eventually had 11 children, 10 of which were girls. And so
It was just the odds, right?
Right. And I said it was, God was already preparing me almost from that time to know what it was like to live in community. So I lived in a small rural home without any of the amenities or the advantages of electricity, running water. We did work in the garden. We raised our crops. We raised our vegetables. So I grew up in that kind of a family, but it was also one that was very Catholic. My mother was very insistent that we prayed the rosary every day, that we made sure that we were at church every Sunday, that we had religious books in the house, and just that awareness of God needed to be first in our lives. So I went to a small grade school, and almost half the school was my family. But there I actually ended up skipping a grade, so I was ready to start high school at 12 years old. Finished high school when I was 16 and then entered the community. But in the process of trying to figure out my vocation, I was taught by Benedictine sisters in summer school, and they had invited me to possibly join them. But it was a large community, and I felt much more comfortable with a smaller community. So as I was looking at going to a boarding school run by our sisters, that it fit into what I really wanted. I was also there on a work scholarship, so I got very much acquainted with the sisters in the process at that time, both work and prayer. And one of my best jobs was helping to clean the chapel. But during my senior year, I really looked seriously at, okay, God, what do you want of me? I looked at marriage and saw how happy we were as a family. And I looked at religious life, and it's like, okay, God, well, let's make a deal. If you want me to marry, then on my part, I would like to have at least 20 children. Now, 20 children didn't mean I knew how I was going to provide for them. It was just that I wanted the happiness that comes from a house full of children. So the Lord gradually led me to know that I didn't have to have those 20 physically. If I was a teacher, and that what I really wanted to do, I could have 20 plus children, because all of my students would then become my children. And so I ended up saying, well, I have the blessings of both. During my preparation for vows and later on, I did complete studies for a teaching degree, taught in our grade schools, staffed by our community, and then ended up teaching also in high school. And at one point I had said to the Lord that I didn't ever want to teach in high school. But it seems like every time I said it was something I didn't want to do, that's exactly what he was leading me to do. Now, those were hard years, but also the very joyful years. In 1977, and this kind of ties in also with my future ministry, my community responded to the Holy Father's call for missionaries to go to foreign countries to help spread the faith. We were a small community, but the community decided that we would send 3 sisters. 2 of the sisters in the community really felt a missionary vocation. I had not. But when I heard that the place we would be going to would be in the Amazon rainforest, very remote from any large city, almost inaccessible, except by water, that my growing up in the country would help me to live in that kind of an atmosphere, an environment. So I volunteered. I figured that that's where I would be for the rest of my life, even signed papers saying so, and that I would be buried there. Well, that wasn't destined to be the all of my life. I was there 17 and a half years, working in both helping out in the medical field a little bit with the sister who was a nurse, also teaching in the school, teaching all of the religious classes. And so thought, well, looks like I'm going to be here. But then 17 and a half years later, I ended up getting sick. And so we had to rethink what was happening to my time in the missions. But while I was there, I always called the 17 and a half years another school of faith and trust, because God was giving me the time to look at his bigger picture. And even though I was complaining and rejecting and arguing and all of those resenting some of the opportunities that he gave me, I did end up growing stronger in faith and trust, and in knowing that he was leading me and I needed to do his will. So I returned back to the States after these 17 and a half years. But at that point it was, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Lord, what are you wanting me to do? What can I do that can be of service to the church? And so what happened in 1995 when I returned was that the people, as I'm leaving Brazil, said, you've given us supplies to help keep our families together, to help support the school, the parish. Would I please continue to send particularly Pepto-Bismol? So I said part of my next mission is sending Pepto-Bismol to Brazil to take care of particularly a lot of the stomach problems, ailments that the people there had, and many people had those ailments. So how do you go about sending Pepto-Bismol to a foreign country? Well, in those years, it was the yellow pages that you just started looking and saying, shipping companies, containers, what's the best way? And so I was told that I could send a crate of Pepto-Bismol, but if I wanted to send a 20-foot container, I could put the Pepto-Bismol in and finish filling up the 20-foot container of all kinds of supplies. So I said, okay, we'll do 1 container a year. That will be our continual support of the people in Brazil, and it would keep our connection then with them. Well, it was not just one container a year, but in 5 years we had sent 25 containers. And at that point, it's again, God, what do you want? You know, we were going to do one container. We're now doing 8 a year. I can no longer do all of that lifting of barrels and boxes and all of that. So we built a 9,000 square foot building on the property that would be able to store enough supplies for those 8 containers a year. Now, I thought everything was resolved. It was now God taking charge and everything was in order, and we could continue to support the mission in Brazil with supplies, and that would be our mission activity. Well, the fall of, or 6 months after we had put up the building, had put out 4 of the 8 containers, and the bishop in Brazil said, don't send anymore. It was getting too difficult to get the supplies down the 2-month trip into the Amazon River. So what that meant was we had a warehouse full of supplies. So in my own desperation at that point, doubt, anxiety, looking around at this 9,000 square foot warehouse full of supplies, I just said, God, where are you? What is happening? I don't know where you want these supplies to go, but I know that you know who needs them. So if you just let us know the places, give us the physical strength to do the work, and then help us find additional volunteers and the necessary funds, we will continue to do his work. Now, his answer, I would like to say it was immediate. It wasn't. It was a month in coming. And he would just said, look around, listen in the silence, and you will know. So for that month, I was listening. A month later, we found the answer. It was the earthquake in El Salvador in 2001. People who had done mission trips in El Salvador came back and said, would we send supplies to El Salvador? Well, within 4 months, we had sent them 4 40-foot containers. And our warehouse is continuing to fill up. And so requests came in from Dominican Republic, Malawi, Peru, and Ecuador. Places that we had no sisters involved in. Malawi, I wasn't even sure where it was. And they were all asking for help. They had said they heard that we were sending supplies. Would we please help them? So we were able to do that. And for me, it was like the windows of Brazil were closing, or had already closed, and the doors of the world were open. And in addition to those first 4 additional, besides El Salvador, requests constantly kept coming in from around the world. And so at that point, it's again, God, is this what you want of us? We're now able to send not just 4 or 8, we're now able to send in something like 10 or 12 shipments overseas. We're helping people in the United States. But it was getting more complicated to send shipments overseas. And so God, once again, steps in the midst of our story, and we get a request from Project Cure, the largest provider of medical equipment and supplies for overseas countries, based in Colorado, was asking us if we wanted to be a distribution center for them, with them. Now, they already had centers in Phoenix, Nashville, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Houston. They didn't have one in the Midwest, in the South Midwest. And so after working with them for until 2020, we developed and ended up being one of their distribution centers. Now, what that meant for us was that instead of having to do all of the book work, all of the financial part ourselves, we would be able to do many more shipments, helping many more people. But it also involved finding not just a 9,000 square foot, but a 54,000 square foot of warehouse space. And we did find that in what people in this area know as the Hunt Midwest subtropolis. So by June of that year of 2020, we were able to get everything kind of coordinated, move everything from our warehouse here over there. And what happened with that is that Denver was able to give us the major support that was needed in getting shipments, sending shipments over, but making sure that the shipments were being used by people who knew what to do with the supplies. So we went from this very small 9,000 square foot building, doing it basically pretty much on our own, to going to a part of this big establishment. Now, the difference between the two of us is that in just 1 year, through its satellite or distribution centers, Project Cure was able to send 183 of those 40-foot containers, and they went to 48 different countries. In addition to emergency hospital beds, almost 10,000 of them that went to 5 different continents. I guess the real advantage to being connected with them and doing what we see now as this missionary activity is that every time a 40-foot container of supplies goes out, that means that those 20 to 20,000 pounds of supplies are not being used in the landfill. There are supplies that otherwise would not be used here in the States. And so what costs $20,000 to $25,000 to send a container over has the value of roughly $400,000. So that last year, Project Cure was able to send $60.7 million worth of medical equipment and supplies around the world. And we're one of the arms of that organization. So it helps us in that sense, hopefully more people to know of the great need for that kind of thing happening in the United States, that the number of supplies that were going to landfills were not being used, and that there were people in foreign countries who were finding the first time the medical equipment and supplies that they needed. And so what started out as one simple 20-foot container in 1995 has now ended up to being a part of this organization that has sent out 180 to 200, 250 on a good year to help people overseas. And just out of our own little place here in Kansas City, just last year, we were able to send out 27 of those containers. And those went to 18 different countries. So I have great hope, great enthusiasm yet in those shipments. But I guess in the midst of all of that, I do have a message that I would like to give to people who might be interested in religious life.
Sure. Let us know. Let's hear it.
Right. Okay. I actually have 3 things which I learned in my searching. And the first one was that you have to take time to listen. And you have to listen with your eyes, your ears, your mind, your heart, and your soul. And in order to do that, it's really important to spend time in his presence, which we have that time every day, many times. And that God loves us much more than we can imagine. And he always wants the best for us. And then secondly, you have to take a leap in faith. In all of those different stages in my religious vocation, I didn't know back many times what the next step was going to be. So you have to be able to take that step and not be afraid of the unknown. The trust that knowing that his hand is going to be there, that will pick you up when it looks like you're failing, and that he doesn't come alone because he brings his mother with him to help us on our way. And the third one, which was the essential one, was to rely on the assistance of others. Another way I said it is, don't do it alone. And that also aspects of life is the physical, emotional, psychological, social, and spiritual assistance to giving to one another. And many times the very people who meet you on the way are the angels that God is sending. And as I reflected on this, it's like I've been in this business of religious life for over 60 years. If I had known 60 years ago that my journey would have taken me all of this way, I probably wouldn't even have started. I would have said, there's no way that being a little farm girl, that I could have managed to do many of the things that I've done. And so I know that God in his love, his goodness, and his mercy and patience has been guiding me along the way. And so he's taught me that don't put a limit on what he can do. His grace will be there, and that just with him to discover what will bring you and others his best joy.
So I posted a link to your to the Mission Warehouse Facebook page that you guys support. What are some things that you need help with? If people want to get involved, they want to help you out, and they want to push that mission out even further, what are some things that you need for the warehouse to keep going, and maybe people can get connected with you?
Okay, now, did you click onto the Project Cure warehouse? Is that the one you went on to?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What we need there are lots of volunteers who can spend 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, 2 hours a day. It's just the schedule is very flexible on that. So volunteers for sorting supplies, lots of people who have medical background, who can be the chief sorters of the supplies, but people don't have to have the medical equipment and expertise because they will be taught there. We need truck drivers because in the Kansas City area, the hospitals are cooperating with us, but many times we have to go pick up the supplies from there. So we need men or women truck drivers. You don't have to have a special license. They're the Penske-sized trucks. So just have to have a driver's license and could then say, well, I can give 3 hours a week to go pick up supplies from hospitals. We need people who can just spread the word of what we're doing, much as what I've shared with you. Just people who have heard this and say, oh, I know this hospital. I know that other group. I know this nursing home is taking out beds. And just knowing that it's not just in Kansas City. If there are people listening around the United States, Denver has a place, Phoenix, Nashville, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Houston. All would have those same needs. And the website of projectcure.org gives all of the specifics for each one of those places. And then, of course, we need the financial help to get the shipments sent over. It would be wonderful if we could find organizations, businesses who will say we can commit X number of dollars every year to support the work. That would give us that added additional part of saying, okay, we know we only have to raise $500,000 this year because the other $500,000 is already taken care of. I used to joke but be serious with people when they'd ask me, what did I need? I would say, I need $1 million a year. Now, at first it was $1 million over 5 years. Well, the 5 years have passed, so now it's $1 million a year. And that would enable us to send between 40 and 50 40-foot containers a year, each one of them valuing $400,000. So it's a tremendous ministry. And the other part, my dream was that in every major town and sometimes minor cities in the United States, that there would be people collecting and distributing these kinds of medical supplies to the needy around the world.
And if people are interested in, your being a religious Franciscan sister, where can they go to find out more information about your community? And who knows, maybe what the Lord is going to tell them to do is some other 17-year-old stint in another country and start a whole new mission. But where can they find out more about your religious community if they're interested in visiting or helping out in that area?
They would look under the Sisters of St. Francis of the Holy Eucharist.
Okay. I'll post a link to those two in the Facebook, so the Warehouse and the Franciscans of the Holy Eucharist. So, Sister, thank you so much for your time and dedication. We really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, and mostly appreciating your ability to say yes, because like you said a couple of times, both in your vocation story and your call to this mission, you asked God a very direct question, and He gave you a very direct answer, and that's what you asked for, but you said yes. Sometimes we don't like the answer that we get back from God, and we say, whoa, that's not what I wanted. And so I think hearing your story and hearing a little bit about the work that you're doing, putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak, and say, this is what I asked for, and so I gave it to the Lord. And seeing the discrepancy from, in your earlier years, if they would have told you would be doing this, you would say absolutely not, which shows the way that the work the Lord has moved in your heart all of these years. And so we just thank you for being a witness and for helping to sanctify the world through your charity and mission. So thank you so much, Sister, for your time, and we hope to have another conversation again someday.
Okay, and thank you very much for allowing me to share the story of actually God's guidance throughout my whole life.
Absolutely.
We always say it's not my mission. It wasn't even the community's mission. It was His mission.
Absolutely.
And He allowed it to be a part of that.
Absolutely. Well, God bless, Sister.
Thank you. Thank you. Bless you.